and welcome everyone. I'm Erin Beloin. I'm the Director of Program Management within the School of Professional Studies at Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. I'm joined by my colleagues, Dana Katropa and Allison Daniel. Dana is one of our wonderful adjunct faculty members and subject matter experts within the SPS. And Allison serves as the Assistant Director of Program and Event Operations. I'm going to pass the baton to each of them now to say a quick hello. Dana?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's wonderful to meet you all today. As Erin said, I'm one of the adjunct faculty here. I have over 20 years of teaching experience, and I really enjoy working with groups like you. Allison?
Hi everyone, welcome. I mostly help with logistics in our courses and try to ensure that everyone has a smooth and engaging experience in our courses. So hopefully look forward to working with many of you.
Great, thanks. We appreciate you all joining us today. I know some of you may be on lunch or just blocking time for this learning opportunity. Either way, today's session will be a quick but practical look at strategic email communication. So, how to be clear, credible, and influential in all of your professional messages. Whether you're managing a lab, leading a clinical team, or communicating across departments, this session will give you a few tactical tools to help improve your email messaging as soon as this afternoon.
Great. So as you see here on the slide, we have three goals for this session. And the goals here are more than just goals. They're really strategic competencies. These are skills, real skills that can help you in every day of your professional life, as Erin said, even starting this afternoon. So first, we want to decode how digital communication shapes perception and credibility. So we want to understand why this is all important. Then we want to apply some frameworks that we can use in across different contexts. And finally, we want to practice. We want to practice these and make them kind of second nature. So if you wouldn't mind, we'd love to have you introduce yourselves in the chat. You can use your name and your organization if you feel comfortable. And also, we're interested in your biggest email pet peeve, what is something that annoys you about email? And again, there's no wrong answers here. So if you want to share, we'd be very interested to hear what kind of annoys you about email.
Awesome. Yeah, we'd love for this webinar to really be interactive and fun and kind of just get our wheels turning about all of our collective experiences. And I wanted to note that everything we're covering today does come straight out of our 6-week professional education short course called Effective Communication Strategies for Healthcare and Life Sciences Leaders. And today's workshop is specifically focused on email communication, as Dana mentioned, because it's one of the most common and high impact forms of professional communication we all use every day. But the full course does take on a much wider lens. We cover presentation skills, virtual meeting best practices, and also written strategies across a whole host of digital channels. So Allison will be sharing details about the short course a little bit later on in the workshop, and you'll have a chance to register actually at a special promotional rate just for registering for this session today. Before we dive in, we want to take a few minutes to share about professional education in general at MCPHS. Some of you here may be familiar with us, some of you may be alumni, so welcome back, and maybe some of you are new to us. But if you're a working professional looking to grow in healthcare or life sciences, here's what you should know about us. First, our programs are built with flexibility in mind. We know that you're either working full-time or juggling multiple responsibilities, so we offer online and hybrid options to fit your schedule and your career goals. MCPHS also has deep industry roots. Our alumni are thriving in roles across biopharma, regulatory affairs, clinical research, and beyond. So sort of this iterative feedback that we have with these contacts ensures that our programs are designed to give you the most relevant skills and professional connections as well. Third, we're focused on impact and return on investment. In one of our partner programs, 93% of the professionals enrolled said the skills they gained were directly applicable to their roles. And 80% felt more valued by their employer after engaging with our content. And finally, we're so proud of our inclusive interprofessional learning environment. At MCPHS, you're part of a diverse community, learning alongside peers from across disciplines, preparing to lead in today's collaborative healthcare and life sciences landscape. If you're ready to continue your professional learning, we're here to help. And here's a short clip highlighting all the ways professional education at MCPHS really stands out for advancing leadership and professional growth across healthcare and the life sciences.
Thanks to those of you who have been sharing your name and organization and some email pet peeves in the chat. I certainly can relate to some of these. I see a 2-page long email signature as one, going back and forth and feeling like the message is still not getting through. And then finally, just really long emails with lots of links without getting to the point quickly. So I think we're going to actually hit on all of these today, right, Erin?
Yeah, absolutely. That really lines up with what we have on deck. So perfect. I think it's helpful to just start by putting email into perspective in general. I think it's really easy to underestimate and even forget how much space email takes up in our daily professional lives. Globally, we're projected to send nearly 376 billion emails every single day this year. So that's a really staggering number. It's also a reminder how busy our inboxes are. And it's no surprise that 93% of people are checking their email daily, people in general, and nearly half are checking it multiple times a day, sometimes hourly or even more. I even came across a statistic saying that working professionals are often checking email every 5 to 6 minutes. Maybe you relate to that. And that's really just in order to feel like you're staying on top of this endless flow of information. We spend a cumulative average of 5 to 15 hours per week managing our inboxes. So that's between reading, replying, staying organized. I know some people love the concept of, I think it's inbox zero. I can never really quite achieve that, but we all have our own methods for kind of combating this overwhelm that can come on so easily from the process of sending and receiving emails. Many of our emails are read on mobile, so that's just something to keep in mind, right? We're physically moving about and still kind of always on task and trying to keep engaged with these conversations. For knowledge workers, that can reach almost 30% of our entire work week, managing our inbox and all of those conversations there. So really every word, structure, choice, subject line, we have to make that work. We want those 5 to 15 hours a week we're spending to really be impactful and to be working for us. So before the introduction of email in the 1970s and certainly moving into the 80s and 90s, I think we all remember kind of those early days of receiving emails. Organizations were already realizing that they needed to pour enormous effort into finding ways to speed up communication. So companies, agencies, organizations were really expanding in size and complexity And so did the challenge of keeping information flowing efficiently. People couldn't rely on these synchronous face to face exchanges that were so common historically in business, and really needed systems that could move messages much more quickly and securely across departments, even across campuses. So, one fascinating example comes from the CIA, which developed an intricate pneumatic tube system to send classified memos and documents between offices in really a few seconds. So let's take a quick look at how that worked. I just think this is a really interesting example of how we kind of got to email, right? The evolution of modern email. This is kind of the start of that.
Did you ever wonder what the CIA did to send messages before email? Well, we used tubes like this in a pneumatic tube system that sent messages throughout our headquarters building. When CIA moved to our headquarters at Langley, the plans consisted of a pneumatic tube system. On average, our system sent over 40,000 messages a week and over 2 million a year. The system itself consisted of tubing that was 4 inches and over 25 miles long. 4 routing stations managed our traffic, and on average, our messages would reach their destination in under a minute. The agency's tube system was 4 different systems that were differentiated by color. There was green, amber, red, and metal. The system was a dial-in system, so agency officers were given directories so that they knew where these were going to end up. Basically, what you would do is use the rings. It was a 3-ring system. The top 2 rings identified the station, and the bottom ring identified the station number. So if you wanted to go to FR6, you would line all of the numbers up here. The system included provisions for misdirected or damaged tubes, but the rate of this was very low. Less than 1% did not reach their destination. The CIA's pneumatic tube system was put in place in 1963 and decommissioned in 1989. CIA's tube system was unique in size and the fact that it handled classified material, but pneumatic tube systems were hardly cutting edge. I can say, though, that ours was one of the largest internal systems in the world at the time.
All right, so I hope
Did you
you
ever
found
wonder
that
what the CIA
interesting.
did to send messages before?
So fast forwarding from that time and this first kernel of asynchronous communication, we now have email, right? You've got mail. And this is the innovation that really revolutionized how we communicate asynchronously. So for the first time, we're exchanging ideas, approvals, documents without being in the same room. We maybe not even in the same time zone. And it really changed how organizations operate, speeding up that collaboration, breaking down barriers across teams, sites, and continents. So what could go wrong, right? We all know, we've shared in the chat, there are a lot of challenges when it comes to email. We also know that when it's used thoughtfully, email is an incredibly powerful tool. I personally love it. It allows for documentation, clear record keeping, and also traceability of all the conversations I'm having. But as with most powerful tools, the challenge really comes in how we're using it. So the overuse or poor application of it is where we get into trouble and can create confusion, overwhelm, and even erode away trust. So here are some of the questions I know I find myself wondering about when engaging in communication via email. So sometimes I'm worried about my point being properly understood, or wondering if I need to send a clarifying message. If I've sent an email and I'm not hearing back from that person, I'm wondering if they're delayed. Maybe they're having other conversations on their end that I'm not aware of. Maybe they're just checked out. Maybe they never got my original email. Sometimes in these larger group email exchanges, it's hard to know when or if consensus has ever been reached, or if you're just kind of now fallen off into a black hole. And then kind of knowing your role on emails, if you're included. Am I required to respond? Can I stay silent? Am I supposed to be part of the decision-making process? One of my favorite analogies that I've heard about asynchronous communication and email in particular is through this analogy of playing 30 games of ping pong all at once. I'm not very good at ping pong, but we can think of each conversation, each email thread like its own table. And we're just constantly keeping our eye on all of these balls, the volleys, the different players, there's different rhythms. And we know that if we're not hitting that ball back, the game is going to stall and progress stops. So we just feel this pressure all day to kind of like be replying and be replying. And so that's why we thought today's workshop would be a good chance to talk about using email really intentionally, applying structure, tone, and clarity for communication so that it can really work for us. So with all of that context in mind, we can shift now from this sort of big picture to the practical and these strategic tools that we mentioned earlier on. Let's start right at the top with the subject line of our emails. We can think of the subject line as a headline and also our call to action, or our CTA. So in most cases, our reader is going to decide whether to prioritize this email or not based on those few words alone. The strong subject line tells the recipient exactly what's expected of them. So do they need to review something, approve, confirm, decide? Every effective email should have that clear call to action. And if it's not clear, then the message will be incomplete, no matter how well written it is. So we have this poll. Which option do we think follows this recipe for success? So this is interesting. We have a lot of us have landed on the action required feedback for project. And I will say that's not an awful way to lead our email. It does give context, and the reader will know that action is required. But really, it's more specific to say 5 minutes, provide feedback on new lab process by Friday. This really leads with the action, the time frame. It signals the priority that the reader needs to take. Curious, I know we're in webinar format. If you want to at any point kind of add your thoughts into the chat, would love to hear from you. So please let us know your thoughts on that. I think either of these are really acceptable as subject lines. We'll look at some others later on that are really a lot more vague. But kind of having that timestamp there and when a response is due by is really helpful, and it sets the recipient up for success.
Yeah, if you can imagine these subject lines down a long list of emails in your inbox, knowing something that A, takes 5 minutes and is due Friday might, give you a more of a motivation to open up that email when you know what's going to be asked of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'm guilty of it too, just kind of sometimes an email subject line might just say a few thoughts or some questions, and that's really not helpful at all.
Guilty also of that sometimes.
Yes, yeah, I think we all fall into that trap. All right, let's move along.
Yeah, so our next topic is this idea that we should try to stick to the original email chain for a specific topic so that anyone can refer back to the same information. So here we have on the screen a scenario where on Monday you get an email that says lab equipment budget, and on Wednesday you get an email that says a different email that says follow up on lab equipment, and then Friday you get another email that says additional question about equipment. Now, if you open the email on Friday, it would be nice if you could refer easily back to the discussion that happened on Monday and potentially Wednesday, but this scenario is not going to allow you to do that very easily. And as Erin mentioned, with all of these ping pong games going on at the same time, you're asking your brain to work even harder to remember that there was an email on Monday and then actually be able to find it. So Erin, would you mind going to our alternate? So here it just illustrates again that if you allow any email that has to do with lab equipment, you're going to reply back to that same thread. Everybody has access to the same context at the same time in a very easy to see manner. So you're saving your colleagues and yourself time, but also frustration.
Absolutely. I know sometimes I know that there's an email in my inbox and I just can't find it. I might find part of the thread, but then some of it is off in another thread that I, for some reason, can't find. So it can get very confusing. All right, next we're going to talk about managing recipients transparently. So, what do we mean by this? When you add someone new to an email thread, what should you do? So, we have a little poll. So, you've received an email, now you're replying and you're adding someone new. Okay, great. I love it. Thanks for weighing in and participating, those of you who are adding your answers. And a few of you honed in on the importance of mentioning the ad at the top of the message. And so that's really a best practice, is to acknowledge this clearly at the top. Something like CCing Dana for visibility. She's leading our budget approvals this quarter. What is that doing at a strategic level? It's managing recipients transparently, and it's signaling trust, intent, and professionalism. So this also is a little bit about kind of like that psychological safety, because if we receive an email and someone has been added, we don't know why, we don't have any context, we can feel a little even suspicious sometimes, or just questioning why they're there. So when you're clear about who's included and really why, you're demonstrating you're thoughtful, and you understand the context, and you're reading the room and understanding your audience. So if you're saying CCing Dana for visibility, you're showing that you're including people purposefully, and it's not just a political move. So I think we've all been on email chains where maybe someone higher up is just kind of plugged in there all of a sudden, and everyone's kind of then like, oh geez, we need to be on our A game, or what's this agenda happening? So being clear removes ambiguity, prevents misunderstandings. um, I want to talk just a minute about blind carbon copy. So this is where you can copy someone on an email, and the recipient of the email won't see that that person is copied. So this is really meant to be used sparingly and very strategically. So not as a workaround, but a tool for confidentiality when it's appropriate. So maybe you're emailing a really large group and you want to avoid kind of the dreaded reply all, which we'll talk about in a bit. That's a good time to use your blind carbon copy as a tool, or maybe you don't want everyone on the thread seeing everyone else's emails. Varying opinions on how to use this, varying ways we see this in practice. But I don't know if any of you are on Reddit. I'm always kind of interested and intrigued by people's individual scenarios. And we'll call it, Am I the Antagonist for Using Blind CC Emails? So I'm just going to kind of read this out loud. I'm one of a team of brand specialists at a technology vendor. My teammates represent different brands. As a result, are effectively my competitors. As a team, we're pretty tight knit. We pride ourselves on close professional relationships built around transparency. In times past, we uncovered many situations where sales reps were playing us against each other in an effort to see who could jump the highest. One way I keep my teammates in the know is to blind CC them on a reply to a rep who I suspect of using underhanded tactics to get a sale. It's been fairly successful in keeping things on the level, and we haven't faced any pushback. Jump to today when I blind CC'd a teammate of mine on an email to a rep who I suspect of being shady. My teammate was sick at home, not reading properly, in response to the email I had blind CC'd him on. The sales rep goes off on me by saying that looping people in via blind CC is sneaky and lame. I don't think I did anything wrong, except maybe not giving him the benefit of the doubt. I told him how he operates is up to him, how I do so is up to me, and me alone. I continued, if he has an issue, he's more than welcome to take it up with me personally or my management team. He declined. So what do we think? Is he the antagonist for sticking to his guns? Did he use blind CC appropriately? Feel free to chime in if you'd like. But in general, blind CC should not be used for sort of these stealth operations. because if people sense that there's others included on an email and they can't really trust um, the transparency there, then the psychological safety isn't there. So this transparency and communication really signals maturity and helps build trust with those that you're emailing with.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying, Erin, is no surprises, right? You don't want to surprise
Yes,
people by BCCing or all of a sudden adding in a very important superior to everyone onto an email chain that people weren't expecting.
exactly. Yes, I think that's really off-putting
Yeah,
and can really cause fractures in the team.
absolutely. So the next idea is it's to lead with value. And I think those of you who shared your email pet peeves, this will be of interest to you. So in other words, you kind of want to start with what you're asking for and then follow up with context instead of starting with the context and building up to what you're asking and hoping they kind of get to the bottom of your email eventually. So we have two versions here, and I'll read this one out loud. It says, "Hi, Sam. Hope your week's going well. I'm working on next quarter's resource plan for the cell culture expansion project and was hoping to gather input from each department. Would you be able to send your team's projected supply needs?" So that's the first version where, well, let's see the second version, then you all can see which one you think would be better. The second version is, "Hi, Sam. Could you send your team's projected supply needs for next quarter by Friday?" And then in parentheses, context, we're finalizing the cell culture expansion plan and need department level inputs. So you can think to yourself, and if you'd like to, you can reply in the chat, which version helps you respond faster? So
Mhm.
we would say it's the one on the left that starts with the ask and then lists the context. So you're putting what you might consider the more valuable information is what they need to do with their energy first. And so again, it's just that sign of everybody is juggling so many things. Anything you can do to respect your reader's time will be an asset, and it will help their relationship, and it will probably help them do the task that you want them to do. And so I think this is a good example on the left of starting with what you want and then including the context at the end.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's worth noting too, when you start at first, if you start removing some of these excess words or softeners, like the message on the right, how it starts with, "Hope your week's going well." That's totally something that I do
Same.
often because I feel like it's a way to add like that warmth. And, um, but sometimes I guess, it can be appropriate, but it also can just add clutter when there's something that really just needs to be an action item. So I don't think taking that out is necessarily cutting down on kindness. It You can think of it as respecting people's time and just being really clear.
And also remembering that usually, typically, relationships should have more built around them than just email. So you
Yes.
have opportunities to be kind, maybe over the phone or in person, or when you're talking about a project in a meeting. Because ideally, again, you're not only relying on email because that can cause a problem of its own.
Yeah, I think that could be its whole other mini workshop, right?
That's
Is
right.
when are we supposed to use email versus having that in-person meeting or using like a project management platform, something like that. So that's a really great point. All right, what should you do? This is about summarizing longer emails. So let's take a look at this email on the left from a project coordinator named Jordan. This is an email to you or to me. Subject: a few things before Friday. Hi. I wanted to check in about a few things before the end of the week. Can you confirm whether the equipment shipment for the cell culture project has been scheduled yet? Number two, I also noticed that the Q2 budget report still lists last quarter's vendor rates. Do you want me to update that or leave it for finance? Lastly, the intern onboarding packet still doesn't include the new safety checklist. Can we add that in before Monday? Thanks, Jordan. So let's look at this response. I think we've all been there when this is like the response we get. Hey, Jordan, the equipment's shipment is scheduled for Thursday morning. So what's problematic here? And we can think about this from both sides because we've all been that person who's either reading or writing a longer email or an email that has sort of multiple points or questions to answer. Now, Jordan did a nice job here, actually, of using numbers. You can also use bullets. You can use bolded words or highlights to kind of help the reader decant down what's here. Because if you see one giant block of text, you're just immediately scanning for clues like, oh my gosh, what's this about? Like, when does this do? What do I need to take action? And that can really start to tune out, and maybe you miss some important aspects if it's like too wordy. As the writer, one of the most powerful things you can do is make that job easier. So like I said, and Jordan did that here, but despite Jordan's effort, the response really only was targeted toward one of their questions about the equipment shipment. So really, if you're receiving this email, you want to ensure that you're summarizing and really replying to each point. And something that I've picked up along the way from colleagues that I've worked with that I really like is when replying to an email with multiple questions, they'll say, you know, responses in red. And then they're kind of taking each bullet point and giving their input that way. And it's a nice, easy way to make sure all of the questions are answered.
I see it's possible that someone has their hand up, but I
Ah,
don't know if you wanted to.
let's see. Allison, do we know?
I think the name on the account is Test. If
Oh,
you
okay.
want to speak, you're enabled
If
to
you are
speak.
test, you can come off mute and let us know if you have a question. Perfect.
So this one is pretty straightforward, but it does require taking that one extra step when you're sending an email to hyperlink. And so the message is hyperlink when possible. So it keeps the email clean, it keeps it easy to read, people are more likely to click on it. But also you might find that you trust the link more. If you look at the one on the left with the long link, and then you look at the one on the right, you kind of immediately know what you're clicking on. And I'm curious, in the poll that you see, which link would you trust more to click on? Would you trust the long string of text and numbers, or would you trust the name? So again, this one requires the email writer to take that extra step, but can really streamline the activities that you're asking people to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can see.
And I think that's nice too. Say you have your Teams in your OneDrive and you're referring to documents there. If you link them within the body of the email, it really makes it nice and easy to reference those documents.
And you can even, if you're using Google Docs, bookmark a specific section of a document and use that as the hyperlink, so it takes people right specifically where you need to
Yes.
go if that's relevant.
Yes, I think all of those like breadcrumbs really
Mhm.
add up and are helpful. Perfect. Okay, I mentioned earlier this moment of the dreaded reply all. So has this ever happened to you where you're accidentally replying to everyone on a large email communication, instantly cringing or cringing for the person who's doing it, and feeling panicked? And what is this about? Why is the accidental reply all so embarrassing? And I think it's because we intuitively know that it sends this signal about what you think everyone's time is worth. And if it's just replying thanks, that's just really not that helpful and doesn't add value for other people on the chain. So one quick win that I wanted to share, I don't know if everyone knows this is an option, but in your email settings, you can actually change your default reply behavior to just basic reply. So you can set yourself up for success to reply directly to the sender instead of replying all. You would have to physically change it to reply all. And it's worth mentioning that there are times when reply all is absolutely appropriate, but you really only want to use it when the response benefits everyone. So, for example, Maybe you have an event recap or like a post-mortem. You've run an event, or, even with this webinar, maybe there's some email after the fact where replying all is of benefit for everyone to see. If you're being thanked by a group, certainly reply all is appropriate, or looping in any relevant parties. Inappropriate uses, replying you too, or good luck if someone is sending their, last day email and they're moving on to a different role. Everyone's chiming in, take care, send a postcard. And then that just really creates like a lot of digital noise for everyone else on the chain. You also want to avoid pointing out a sender faux pas or misstep as a reply all. And I found another Reddit chain kind of scenario speaking to that. So, am I the antagonist for correcting an executive in an email and replying to all? I, 23-year-old female, was on an email chain about our company's website. In the email, a VP was putting my teammates and me on blast because she just had sent a link out to thousands of people, and the page she sent wasn't displaying on the website. I've worked here for about a year. I don't really work on the website much because I'm a software engineer, not a web designer, and the website doesn't need any custom programming. I was curious, clicked on the link. She was right, the page didn't load. I went into the admin panel for the website and saw the page was still in preview. No one had turned it on. I clicked the button to enable it. Now the link was working. I replied back to the email with reply all. I felt that since she added a bunch of people, they should all see she messed up. She said it's fixed, but the page was never turned on. I said it's fixed, the page was never turned on, and that in the future she should verify the links work before sending them out. About an hour later, another VP on the email came to my cube, told me I should never correct an executive like that, and basically shamed me for it. I was actually kind of worried I was going to get fired. I didn't, and my manager said not to worry. Later in the day, I got an email from the original lady that just said, "Thanks for helping so quick." Was I really out of line for replying like that? I read my email like 5 times to make sure I wasn't too abrasive, just explaining what happened and how we can avoid it in the future. So I think definitely, in my opinion, incorrect use of reply all, but
I agree. I agree.
it maybe also 23-year-old female, so maybe she's still kind of navigating workplace dynamics. But anyway, this is just one of those lived experience that we can all kind of relate to.
Absolutely. Well, so we'll continue talking about mistakes and how we can learn from them. Is that we all make mistakes. We are all working maybe too quickly sometimes. We have too many things going on, and just even if you're paying attention, sometimes you make mistakes, just part of being human. But there are a couple strategies that you can use to account for that. And one of them is the unsend feature. And so imagine you just emailed thanks brain to your boss named Brian and you misspelled it. But it's too late, it's gone. But you don't have to worry because you notice it. If you're one of those people that reread things that you just sent, like I do, you'll notice it and you can unsend it. You can go to settings, general, and just set your undo send to 30 seconds, or I always set it to the longest amount possible, longest time frame possible. And now you
Yes.
have time to fix it. So, we can somewhat plan and have a little bit of a strategy if you make a mistake, that you can be able to fix it.
Yeah, so that's something you should do now, because then when the situation occurs, you'll be all ready to go. Um, that's smart. And I think there's a couple other tricks of the trade, right? Things like drafting. So if you're writing an email that might be high stakes, or maybe it's emotional, or maybe just sort of complex and you're struggling, maybe drafting something and then revisiting it before sending can be a great idea. I am one of those people for the longest time would send an email saying, "See the attachment." And now, depending on the email platform, it'll prompt you like you didn't attach. But getting in the habit of maybe attaching the link first or the document first and then writing the email is something I've tried to get in the habit of.
Another tip is to, whether you're writing something that could be controversial or even just a general everyday email, is add the email addresses last. So you're drafting something
Yes.
in your email interface and then you don't accidentally hit send, or things
Yes.
happen with your cursor and you hit send and it goes off. So you can add those emails at the very end, and save yourself some embarrassment potentially.
That's really smart. Yes. Great tip. Curious if anyone has any other tips they picked up along the way, please do share.
Absolutely. And now, so we've just covered a dozen or so tactical things. So tangible tactical things that you can do to be more effective communicators. And now we're going to move more into the strategic, because it's in some settings it's kind of foundational that you're going to be reliable and you're going to incorporate some of the things that we've already talked about. But what moves you from kind of good and reliable to a strategic leader and where you really get noticed is moving into some of these more strategic advanced moves.
Great. Things like summarizing upward. So managing up and sending decision-ready updates for leadership, right? So you're framing your email in a way that allows them to make a decision, and you're not asking, what should we do? You're really setting the stage for them to give approval or not, and move efficiently through the process. Closing the loop gracefully. So I mentioned earlier, sometimes in large email threads, they drift off into a black hole, or they just kind of end nowhere. So it's important that if you're one of the people who has initiated that exchange, that you're actually closing the loop gracefully, thanking all involved, clarity, use appreciation, and really have a wrap up to that thread. Adjusting the level of context depending on the reader role. So this is about knowing your audience. So you're not going to send the same exact email, even though it might be the same situation. Your email should look and feel different, potentially, kind of depending on who you're sending that email to and their role. And anticipating objections is really smart. And I think this is a great, easy win and a way to build credibility within your organization, especially to those who are your leaders. If they see that you're actually identifying what those objections might be and providing those answers up front, that's really valuable. So preemptively answering those questions, I would say, is another important, more advanced strategic email move to have in your tool belt. Anything else to add there, Dana?
I think these are great. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really an opportunity to showcase how you're thinking at that next level in this everyday communication that we use, that's email. So it's an opportunity that if you take advantage of can really work.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So we'll do a couple quick activities to bring this all together. So we're going to go back to subject line. So imagine we'll say you're a clinical ops manager at a busy academic medical center. You're walking into a busy morning, you have a lot of unread emails, you have a rounding report due, your phone's buzzing, and you've got just a few seconds to decide which emails in your inbox you're going to open first. So we're going to go through each subject line and think about the points we've discussed. Is the subject line compelling, specific? Does it just add to digital noise and mental load? And we'll kind of go from there. So subject line, quick question. This is probably as vague as you can get, right? Absolutely no context. It could literally be anything related to work or not. So this is very common. It's low priority. Really doesn't speak to any urgency. Even if the body of the email is urgent, quick question just doesn't do it justice. How about staff schedule? Well, it sounds like an important topic, but it's still ambiguous. So I'm going to put it in yellow because it's unclear about the time frame or action taken. Maybe there's no action that's needed. We just don't know from the subject line. Coverage confirmation needed by 2 p.m. So That sounds in line with everything we talked about. It's specific, it's time bound, it signals immediate relevance. So that's a good one. Patient safety dashboard, review before tomorrow's meeting. Again, this seems to be prioritized for leadership and it's strategic and contextual. So that's another great example. Forward updated info. This is just so much cognitive clutter and sort of repelling, right? Like I don't even know what's in there, but I'm already discouraged. So
Wondering if it's spam.
yes, exactly. So I would challenge everyone on the call that this afternoon, if nothing else, maybe you can just pay a little bit more attention to subject lines, maybe experiment a little bit. You might have fun.
So this one is kind of a rewrite challenge, and we'd love to have your participation if you want to chat in as we go through this exercise. But here is this original email. It says, subject, quick check-in. Hi team, I wanted to touch base on a few things before Monday. Not sure if we have coverage for the infusion center this weekend. If anyone knows, please let me know. Also, I think we're behind on the new patient flow metrics, but I'm not sure if the data from QA is final. We also need to prepare some talking points for the leadership meeting next week. Should that come from nursing or operations? Thanks, Jamie. So does anyone, I'll just give you just a few seconds to think if you want to share in the chat of some improvements that you notice might help this email and help the people on this email get to a conclusion much more quickly and effectively. And while you guys think about that, I mean, Erin, we can bat some ideas back and forth.
Yeah,
Starting with this,
absolutely.
starting with the subject line, I'm thinking quick check-in, if this was on your previous slide, would be under the vague category.
Yes, absolutely. That really doesn't give me much knowledge as to what might be in the email and also whether it's, I mean, in the email, it's saying this needs to happen before Monday, but the subject line leaves that as a mystery.
Great, and I see Justine, thank you for chatting in. Justine says
Thanks.
a running list, like a thought process, maybe a list would be helpful. I think if I'm reading that correctly, that this kind of reads like a stream of consciousness where this person is kind of typing out loud, and asking questions and mixing information with questions, and perhaps should have gotten questions answered before bringing in the group in maybe a different way. What do you think, Erin?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. It seems like it's hard to know as the recipient, like who should chime in on what, and maybe if multiple people are replying to a number of these questions, it's like just gets really messy.
Inviting confusion, yeah. So let's take
Yeah.
a look at the updated one and see how we feel about that one. So subject, weekend coverage and leadership prep, actions needed by Friday. Hi team, please confirm infusion center weekend coverage by Friday at 3 p.m. so we can finalize the staffing report. Next topic, QA data. I've requested updated patient flow metrics. I'll share the latest numbers once validated. Sounds like they've gotten some more info themselves. And then leadership prep. Nursing will draft initial talking points and operations will review for accuracy by Tuesday. Thanks for keeping communication tight as we wrap the week, Jamie. And one strategic thing I see here, Erin, is that perhaps this person has stepped up and figured out the answers to a lot of these questions on behalf of the team. And by sending an email like this is making a stand and kind of taking on that leadership role, which I think will go far in their career, that type of action.
Yes, I agree because the way this email is written, really there aren't any action items I need to take as the recipient other than confirming infusion center coverage, which is a world away from the previous version, which was like peppered with all sorts of questions.
And it also signals a more senior mindset where, like you said before, we're not going to send an email with a bunch of problems and expect other people to solve them, but rather we're going to try to present solutions and answers. And if we don't have them yet, maybe get them ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm on this person's team, I feel like they're a strong and sturdy leader that is going to bring us along. Like I can trust them and they know what they're doing.
And I feel prepared for the weekend coverage. I feel
Yeah,
prepared.
exactly. Okay, great. All right, Allison, I'm going to invite you to the floor to kind of give us some details. We have about 10 minutes left to kind of cover the next step. If you loved this content and want more of it, stay tuned for our short course in effective communications that Allison will share details now.
Thanks, Erin and Dana, for providing such great tools for all of us to keep in our toolkit. As Erin mentioned, this course is full of these types of tools to keep building skills. And so I just want to give some logistics information about the course. It's 6 weeks with 1 additional week to complete deliverable assignments. The next section dates will run from January 7th through February 13th, and registration is open now, so we would love to have all of you sign up and join us. The format is fully online and it's self-paced, so you can move through the content at your own speed, and when you have pockets of time to focus on things, it includes a variety of readings and activities and discussion boards. It will have 1 live session and 1 live discussion forum. So you'll have time to interact with your fellow peers in different industries or avenues and learn from each other, as well as our instructor and the course content. And we'll have 2 deliverable assignments required for the certificate of course completion. The time commitment is about 2 to 4 hours per week for the course. And we have a really user-friendly format in Blackboard. It's easy to move through the different content modules. And as I mentioned earlier, I would be available to support with any logistics questions or help you move through and accomplish your goals for learning. And there also would be a course instructor available to help you navigate everything as well.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I will jump in that Dana is on tap for teaching the next section of this short course in January. So you got a great sneak peek today, and she's led us through this course in the past, and we have some great feedback to share with you in just a few slides.
Definitely. We've also built in some engagement opportunities within the course. Even though it's asynchronous, we want you to be able to learn from each other. We use a platform called GoReact, where you can record a quick intro or a discussion forum thought to share with each other. So it's more akin to having a live conversation. And as we mentioned as well, we'll have a live session similar to this one, but you would be able to turn on your camera and have a little bit more of a live conversation with your peers and the instructors. We'll cover case studies, review key themes and questions, and discuss challenges. And the audience for the course is designed for emerging and mid-level leaders in hospitals, biotech, pharma, and clinical environments who communicate across technical, operational, and clinical research environments. And the course objectives to strengthen communication, confidence, and clarity in digital, written, and virtual interactions, to learn evidence-based strategies for crafting messages that drive action, build trust, and build professional credibility, and to apply advanced communication tools to manage up, align cross-functional teams, and navigate complex workplace dynamics effectively.
Perfect. Thanks, Allison. So as I stated, I just wanted to share some course feedback from our last run of this short course. We had some really positive feedback. You can see that 100% of our participants agreed that the content was relevant to their role. So that's huge. And then 91% strongly agreed that the educational materials were helpful, that effective interactive learning opportunities were provided, and that the activity met educational needs. So it was
And one
really,
thing
really great feedback. Sorry, what was that?
Okay, one thing I really like about this topic is there are frameworks, but there's also room for a lot of
Yes.
individuality and creativity that you can use within the frameworks that we teach about communication.
Yes, absolutely. Things can be very personalized, and it's nice when participants learn from each other too.
Absolutely.
And it's nice to have the mix of, it's not everyone's not in healthcare, everyone's not in lab ops, you know, it's really a mix. And so it's nice to cross-pollinate and apply maybe common strategies from one setting, like maybe I could try that out, even though I work in a different sector. So that's always nice to see as well. And finally, we had 100% of participants planning to apply the course strategies within 3 months, and 40% reported doing so during the course itself. So we really like tactical, hands-on strategies that you can really start applying right away. Thank you so much for being here today and for all of the thoughtful conversations. We hope you're leaving with a fresh perspective and a few ideas to add to your tool belt. If today's session sparked something for you, we'd love to invite you to take the next step. You can register for the course within the next 7 days and receive 10% off with the code workshop10. We can go ahead and drop the registration link in the chat. Allison, I don't know if you have that queued up. But not to fear, we'll also follow up by email so you don't have to go hunting for it, or once we sign off, you'll still have access. The course is really designed for professionals just like you, those navigating complex teams, projects, and decisions where clear communication really drives results. We'd love to support you in becoming the kind of leader whose words inspire clarity, confidence, and trust across every conversation. Thanks again, and we hope to see you in the course.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.